Seeing at 6 p.m., I'd like to call the November 2nd, 2022 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council order. I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening, and if you are able, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Winger?
Present.
Councilmember Baisden?
Here.
Mayor Gabriel?
Here.
Councilmember Dothit?
Here.
Councilmember Sonart?
Here.
Councilmember Naxted?
Here.
And Councilmember Askin?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up, we have agenda approval. Council, before we get to agenda approval, I'd like to call attention to a laydown you should have in front of you with requested additions to the packet. Action, add to item 02. Informational items, photo requested by Councilmember Winger and KMC 13.30.030 and 13.30.0650, also requested by Councilmember Winger. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the agenda with the add item 02 and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Next up, we have the election of the vice mayor. And just so everybody understands the process here, and correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Clerk, is that we'll take nominations from the body for vice mayor. And once all the nominations are closed out, then we will have a secret ballot. There's no second required for the nomination. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to nominate Mr. James Baisden as vice mayor.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, is there any objection to Mr. Councilmember Baisden being vice mayor? Seeing none, congratulations, Councilmember Baisden. Next up, we have consent agenda. A pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the consent agenda and request unanimous consent.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the body that would like to amend the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Approval of the regular meeting minutes of October 19th, 2022. New business, action approval, bills to be ratified, brought to you by the administration. And action approval, granting a utility easement to Homer Electric Association, Inc. within Lot 2, Block 5, General Aviation Apron Subdivision Number 1, amended, brought to you by the administration. And that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to address or speak to any item that is on the consent agenda which was just read into the record? Seeing none and hearing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Tonight we have no scheduled public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to address the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda?
No hands raised.
Seeing none, we'll move to public hearings. First up, we have item D1, ordinance number 3320-2022, accepting and appropriating a donation from Hillcorp Energy Company to assist with the annual area-wide senior Thanksgiving dinner. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3220-2022.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public who'd like to speak to ordinance number 3320-2022?
No hands raised.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Discussion, comments from council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I really appreciate seeing this donation come every year. And frankly, they've been doing it so long, I don't remember how many they've actually done. But it's certainly appreciated down at the senior center and by other members of the public. So I want to thank for the donation.
Thank you. Further discussion? I'd like to also echo Councilmember Naxted's comments in that, actually, I think this was started by Marathon many years ago and then, sort of evolved into when Hillcorp took over those assets that they continued this tradition and certainly appreciate that. And if you've haven't had a chance to go, it looks like they're going to be holding that on, this November 18th, 2022. And council is invited to that and usually is asked to help out and serve meals if you're able to make that. Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes?
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance number 3. I'm sorry. You were here. I'm sorry. Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3320, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have item D2, resolution number 2022-74, establishing dates for regular meetings of the city council for 2023. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Nexon.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-74.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-74? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Was unanimous consent requested? Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I guess for the clerk, seeing how we changed dates this year for December for AML, do you see any conflicts with this schedule?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. I did try to contact AML and find out what time their conference would be next year, and they do not have that date yet. But I will note that we have 3 possibilities in November next year. If it winds up on that first week of December, we could actually move the meeting once we know to that 5th week in November.
Councilmember Baisden,
Thank
or
you.
Vice Mayor Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could follow up. So remind me, we're required to have a certain number of meetings annually?
20 meetings a year.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
Request
Councilmember
unanimous
Nexon.
consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-74 is adopted. Next up, we have action approval under item G3, mayoral liaison nominations for appointment to committees and commissions. And if you'll notice on this, there's the employee subcommittee nomination is TBD, to be determined, because we don't know who the vice mayor would be. And that committee consists of the mayor, vice mayor, and another member of the body. So at this point, I'd like to nominate Councilmember Naxted for that position for the employee subcommittee. So basically, we would just need a motion to approve the nominations. Vice Mayor Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion to approve the nominations.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Can we just ask who are the current members now, just for clarification?
Yes, so right now, it was myself, Vice Mayor Baisden, and former Councilmember Glenn Denning.
Thank you.
Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, just, I think I'd like to have the clerk read into the record the individuals that are going to be on each position. Would be okay.
Okay, very good.
Certainly. The nominations as they stand now are Councilmember Sonart for the Council on Aging, Councilmember Askin for the Airport Commission, Councilmember Dothit for the Harbor Commission, Councilmember Naxted for the Parks and Recreation Commission, Councilmember Baisden for the Planning and Zoning Commission, Councilmember Winger for the Beautification Committee, Mayor Gabriel for the Mini Grant Steering Committee, and Councilmember Naxted for the Supervisory Subcommittee.
Councilmember Dothit.
I see that the mini grant steering committee, is that being dissolved from what I understand? Or?
That was going to be in my mayor report. It was
Oh, okay,
just
sorry.
Yes. Yes, that will be this in its present form, yes.
Okay, I was just checking. I saw it on there still.
Yep. Thanks for pointing that out. I was gonna go over it with my mayor report. Any other discussion on the liaison nominations?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there an objection? Seeing none, the liaison nominations are approved. That brings us to confirmation of mayoral nomination for appointment to the Council on Aging. Councilmember Naxton.
I move that we accept the mayor's nomination of Glenn East Petty to the Council on Aging.
Second?
Request unanimous consent.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, Ms. Petty is nominated, or is appointed to the Council on Aging. That brings us to G5, action approval, confirmation of mayoral nominations for partial term appointments to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move that we confirm James Glendenning as a partial term ending December 31st, 23, and John Costin for a partial appointment ending December 31st, 22. Request unanimous consent.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And just so you guys know the process, there's, we don't have to approve these, the Planning and Zoning Commission nominations this meeting, and the way they did, the reason for that was it would allow council to reach out to the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission to, talk to them, but it doesn't say we can't approve those either at this time. Councilmember Dothett.
Just for clarity, so this is just until December, and then we'll be seeking new applications in December? Is that the
No, so this was another sort of interesting way we had to do this, because we had 3 openings on planning and zoning because of the appointment, because of the election results and the new council members that had served on planning and zoning. And so what this does is this would appoint Mr. Glendenning till December 31st of 2023, and Mr. Costin until December 1st of 2022. And if you'll notice, the next item on the agenda is to approve Mr. Costin for a full term along with Ms. Fikes. So we're approving, what this does is it approves Mr. Glendenning till December 31st, 2023, and Mr. Costin till December 31st, 2022. And then our next item would approve him for the full term along with Ms. Fikes.
So is there still, to my understanding, is still an opening on that Planning and Zoning Commission then?
No.
You said there was 3?
There was
These-
3 openings and 3 applications, yeah.
And we're approving 2?
Yes, but Ms. Fikes will be the next.
I
This is
see what
just
you're
for the
saying.
partial terms.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Thank you.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is to approve the nominations to planning and zoning. Unanimous
Request
consent.
unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, Mr. Glendenning is appointed till December 31st, 2023, and Mr. Costin's appointed till, from this action, till December 31st, 2022. Next up, we have item G6. Action approval, confirmation of mayoral nominations for appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the terms beginning January 1st, 2023. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Next. Did I say that right? Did I explain that right? Okay. Because,
I'll read it.
yes.
If it's okay,
Yes,
you know,
go ahead.
I move that we accept the nominations of
Yes.
Diane Fikes for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 and ending December 31st, 2025, and John Costin
Yes.
for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 and ending December 31st, 2025. Request unanimous consent.
Second?
Councilmember Doffin.
On that, would we be able to wait one meeting to confirm that for the longer period to see if there's any other applicants for that before this, or?
Yeah, Ms. Sainer.
Thank you. So, our code is very specific on how we advertise and deadlines. So we did the advertisement already. So if we were to reopen the application period, that would set it so we couldn't actually do those appointments at a later date until like the end of December. So.
Okay, I was just curious if that was the only options we had for applicants, I guess we had for the positions.
Right. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, Ms. Fikes and Mr. Costin are appointed to their term beginning in January 1st, 2023 and ending December 31st, 2025. That brings us to item G7, Employee Subcommittee Report on City Manager Recruitment. Let's see if I can pull that up. Give me a minute here. So one of the things on our item this evening is executive session, which will review the questions that the subcommittee fleshed out for the applicants and the actual interviews that we'll be doing hopefully on around November 17th or 18th. What we'd like to do, let me see if I need to pull up my roadmap here. What we'd like to do is actually, now that we have our new subcommittee seated, is to take the applicants and work with the Human Resources Department. I believe there was 14 applicants, and distill them down to the top 5. So we'll basically rank those based on certain matrix criteria. We have all the applications available for the council to review. They can pick up, I believe, tonight. Those are ready. So you can take those home. Those are confidential documents. So we ask that when you take those home and review them, that you put them back in the folder and return those back to Human Resources Director. But we want, the council and the body would still be involved with reviewing all the applications. What we would like to do is just be able to work, sort of winnow those down and have a special meeting on November 20th to go over the ranking that the subcommittee has come up with to determine, to give notice to the applicants that we're going to plan on interviewing. Councilmember Dothan.
So is the subcommittee going to be the ones narrowing it down, or is the council going to have a say in those 5 final?
The council will have a say, and that's you'll have the opportunity to review all the applicants. What this does, it just allows the subcommittee to work with Human Resources to come down, through a matrix of, work experience, all the criteria that we've sort of set forth in our job description to come up with who we think the best qualified candidates would be.
I'm assuming these 14 have already been vetted through the minimum standards.
Yes, I did talk to Christine today, and said they were all qualified.
Thank you.
So I guess what I'm looking for would be a motion to give the subcommittee authority to review the applicants with the Human Resources Director to rank the candidates for consideration at our meeting on November 10th. Councilmember
We need to
Dawson.
make a motion for the subcommittee to have authority to rank the candidates for the November 10th application for city manager.
Thank you.
That's second. That's for unanimous.
Thank you. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, we will work on that. I'll get with Christine and schedule an appointment with Henry and Councilmember Nax and Vice Mayor Baisden to rank those, and then we'll be looking at having a special meeting on November 10th to review the candidates and then determine who we're going to interview. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have a rescheduling joint work session with Kenaitze Indian Tribe. Mr. Ostrander. Oh.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So there's a memo on page 36 of your packet. So I was actually notified, well, let's back up a little bit. At the last council meeting, council scheduled a meeting for tonight, actually, from 4:45 to 5:45 with the Tribal Council of Kenaitze Indian Tribe. I was informed last week that November 2nd wouldn't work for several tribal council members. They wanted to have full participation, so they have suggested moving the joint work session to January 4th instead. It would still be from 4:45 to 5:45. So this discussion item is intended for council to consider moving that to January 4th, 2023, again, from that 4:45 to 5:45 timeframe. And according to the Executive Director, Peter Yvonne of the Kenaitze Indian Tribe, he believes the entire tribal council will be able to make that date.
So this is more of a discussion item. There's no required action here, but just sort of a nod of heads if that's acceptable for everybody. Councilmember Dothan?
Would that be the same time, the 4:45 timeframe?
Yes. Councilmember Winger?
I will not be in state for that work session, so I will not be able to attend.
Okay. Would you like to call in, or would you, if that's an
I will
option?
be too far ahead in time zones.
Okay. Nodding of heads of, does that work? Okay. Councilmember Naxton?
Yeah. I'd just like to ask an additional question. I was wondering who's going to set the agenda, if there's going to be one, and if we're going to get that in advance, or we're just going to, what's the plan?
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Naxted. So, yeah, we actually had the agenda established for tonight, so, and that was just Randy Broyles and I working with the mayor to put the agenda together with Peter Evon. So I'm assuming that the agenda is going to be very similar, and you'll get that the same day you'll get your packet for the January 4th meeting.
And then I suspect we'll have a reminder sent out. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to commission committee reports. Council on Aging, Councilmember Naxton.
No report, other than I would like to say that I've been the liaison for every commission and committee, I guess except for beautification, and I had the most fun with Council on Aging. Great group. Mm-hmm. It's a whole different type of environment. It was great fun, so you're going to have fun on that. Thank you.
Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll hand off the Airport Commission. We didn't have a meeting last month. Our next meeting is November 10th. Nothing to report, and have the same good thing to say about the Airport Commission. Great commission to work with, and I look forward to working with Jim, planning and zoning.
And on that note, just so folks know that the planning and zoning liaison assignment's a heavy lift. So, because they meet, it's essentially almost every Wednesday of every month for meetings. So there'll be times if Mr. Bazin can't make it, he'll probably reach out to folks to fill in. So please, if you can accommodate him, much appreciated. Harbor Commission. That was Glenise, okay. So no
I have no
report.
idea.
Parks and Recreation Commission.
Parks and Recreation will be meeting tomorrow, I believe, and I will hand that off on behalf of Jim Glendenning.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission.
Planning and Zoning's meeting was canceled, and that torch will be handed off to Mr. Baisden as well.
Thank you. Beautification Committee.
No meeting, no report.
Thank you.
Although I guess they should take credit for decorating our beautiful city in winter white.
Yeah. A little soon for me, but that's fine. Next up, we have Mini Grant Steering Committee. And so what we did is we had a discussion. I've worked with the city clerk regarding sort of the direction of that committee. And it was what we were able to look at the history. This was a committee that was set up by the former mayor, Pat Porter, which there wasn't really, we couldn't find where it was authorized really by council to do that. So it's been a little bit hit and miss here with the applications. Some have been, I would say, not necessarily meeting the criteria of what was originally proposed for that committee as far as innovative ideas for this that would benefit the city of Kenai. So what we'd like to do is probably have the clerk and I will work together to come up with another form and something that would involve all the council, something along the lines of having an open period for applications for mini grants, and then a consideration around budget time or so that we could work those in and make a determination of whether approval or not approval. So it'll probably be coming back in some form, but the present form it just really wasn't working very well. So since there was no council action to form the committee, there really wasn't any council action required to dissolve the committee either. So anything that we would do would be through authority from the council to actually establish a form of mini grant process, I guess you could say, not necessarily a separate committee. So, anything to add, Shelley? Okay. And with that, we'll go to Mayor's report. First of all, congratulations to Vice Mayor Bazin. Look forward to working with you. I want to let everybody know that, of course, Election Day is next Tuesday. Make sure you get out and vote if you haven't already. And on another note, since we will not be having our next meeting before Veterans Day, that just a reminder that Veterans Day is November 11th, and the American Legion will be having an event at their building in Old Town at 11 o'clock on November 11th. So for folks that are interested in celebrating our veterans. And with that, I'll go to administration report. City Manager, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So as Councilmember Sonart said, beautification can take credit for the beautification of our city. However, the snow comes with other repercussions, and that is snow removal. And I'm sure that you've all been involved in it over the last couple of weeks. We had what my streets foreman said, the first snow of the year was the biggest snow event they'd ever seen as a first snow event of the year. When we had that on the 26th of October, that day, Public Works received 42 calls complaining about snow removal. The next day, we got 32 calls, which was the day that we finally got on top of it. It actually took us 2 full days to clear the city streets, primarily because that first snowfall was not only 10 or 11 inches, but it was extraordinarily heavy snow, and it's really difficult to manage when it's heavy like that. So anyways, total of 74 calls over 2 days. Scott Curtin's admin, Lisa List, is the one fielding all those calls, and the look in her eyes on those days is one of complete stress, but, she handles it well. Most of the complaints are about the berms at the end of driveways, that you've plowed in my driveway. And again, particularly with that heavy snowfall that we saw last time, when we're pushing a lot of snow down these streets, you can lower that gate, but it literally does nothing. And the further you push, the less effective those gates become. And eventually, there's very little difference between the berms that you're creating along the road and then on the driveways themselves. It takes us a while, but we do get back to those and clear those berms, but it is a major inconvenience for folks, especially if they have a 2-wheel drive vehicle. There's just not a whole lot that we can do to accommodate that or fix that. I do appreciate the laydown that you have tonight from Councilmember Winger. I think it brings up 2 items that I would like to discuss. The first is the snow being pushed onto city streets by residents of the city. So there's an ordinance on the books, and the portion of the ordinance that's relevant is included in the laydown that says specifically that you should not push the snow from your property onto the city right-of-way. We see it all across the city, but it is problematic, and a couple of the reasons why it's problematic is as that snow is pushed out there, particularly when it's on the edge, and you get a change in the weather, those berms become extremely hard. They'll freeze solid. And when they're frozen solid, and we've got one of our street operators out there at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're going down that street, and they're trying to push the snow, and they hit one of these berms, a couple things can happen. One is it can damage the equipment. That grader gets sent to the shop, and it's not available for the next day. The other thing that can happen, which is even potentially more dangerous, is when they hit a really hard berm, that entire grader will actually move into the other lane of traffic, which is a significant safety concern. So trying to convince the public not to push their snow into the streets is something that we're trying to figure out how to get our arms around this, and it's a difficult issue exactly how to address it. One of the things that we discussed, and actually Chief Ross and I talked about this afternoon, is we're going to try to get some additional collaboration between the Kenai Police Department and the Streets Department. So the plan is at this point is after this snowfall right now is cleared off and things are kind of settled down, we're going to get our streets foreman in a vehicle with one of our sergeants and drive the streets and talk specifically about what areas are of greatest concerns to our operators. once we address that, we're going to figure out what we can do to address those most problematic areas. And I'm not sure what that looks like yet. I mean, this ordinance says specifically we can cite and fine folks, but the problem becomes is who do you cite and who do you fine? And I have a sense that if you start citing and fining folks, you're going to have a ton of contested citations. And in some of the cases, it's going to be really difficult for us to make a case that, yes, you're the one responsible for this, because there's contractors clearing driveways. It may not be your contractor that did it. It's just problematic. So the first step is a collaboration between the police department and streets to try to figure out what we can do about some of these areas that are of greatest concerns to our street operators. So that's the plan as far as snow in the streets. The second one is vehicles that are parked in the street. These are problematic for snow clearing, obviously, because our operators out in the middle of the night, they are going down a street, there's a vehicle parked in the street, they have to go around it. You don't get the street cleared. Then in some cases, you're missing 100 yards of the street that should be cleared. Right now, the ordinance says that you should not be parked on the street from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. So again, talking to Chief Ross this afternoon, we are going to begin taking a more aggressive approach towards these violators that are in the streets from 4 to 8. Towing can be problematic for a multitude of reasons. Towing is not as readily available as it used to be in the city. There's fewer towing contractors available, but what we can do is we can start citing and fining these folks that are in the streets. And we're hopeful that if we start doing this, that it will get their attention and they'll stop parking on the streets. The other thing, and this was in talking to Mr. Curtin today as well, administration is strongly considering bringing forward an amendment to that ordinance that would prohibit parking on the streets during the winter. Because we don't just clear snow from 4 to 8. And if, like today, for example, we were out all day. If there's cars in the street, which they're allowed right now, it makes snow clearing really difficult. So you will likely be seeing an ordinance that is going to modify that to make it where you are not allowed to park on the street during the winter months. So again, we're going to take a more aggressive approach to that. We hope we can make a dent in the number of folks that are parking in the streets. You know, I will say that our street crews are highly trained and highly capable individuals. And they work extraordinarily hard. I mean, they take the commitment to clearing our city streets personally. You know, they're out, if we have a snow event, they're out 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they'll work long, long hours just trying to get through the streets every day. You know, one of the things we need to do is align the public's expectations with what is realistic. You know, we live in Alaska. It's cold here. It snows here. You know, sometimes it snows a lot here. And you know, it's not reasonable to think that we're going to be able to get all the roads perfectly cleared within 24 hours. We don't have the resources to do that. So trying to get the public's expectations aligned with what is realistic is something that's important and something that I think we need to work to do a better job of. I know Mr. Curtin is working on a snow removal policy that we hope can help in that regard, but I think there's more work to be done there as well. So anyways, that's enough talk about snow for now. Also wanted to mention that yesterday I went down to Homer to a Kenai Peninsula Municipal Managers Association meeting. That's Seward, Homer, Soldovia, Soldotna, and Kenai. We meet once a month, usually by Zoom, but about quarterly we try to meet together. So we met in Homer yesterday. It's a really good opportunity just to work through issues that are common to all the cities within the borough and also share ideas, things like that. It's a valuable time, and actually we'll miss those meetings now that I won't be invited to the ones in the future. Maybe they'll invite me, who knows. But I will miss those meetings. I'm going to be presenting a couple times in the next 4 days, primarily about the Bluff Stabilization Project. The Unocal retirees have asked me to present tomorrow to talk about just general city issues, but also talk to them specifically about the Bluff Stabilization Project and where we're at on that. And then on Sunday, I'm presenting to the Kenai Historical Society, and that one is specifically about bluff stabilization as well. And with bluff erosion, so we're beginning to work now with the Corps on what's called the PPA agreement, which is the Project Partnership Agreement. And what this agreement does is it basically establishes the responsibilities of the Corps and the responsibilities of the city. And a big component of that is how much money are we on the hook for potentially, and how much is the federal government committing to pay towards the project. So some of these preliminary numbers are showing up on these PPA agreements now. We hope to have a refined estimate from the Corps on the construction of the project in December timeframe. At that point, that will be what gives them the green light to get that final PPA in place so that we can go ahead and sign that. And that really is the final commitment saying that this project is going to happen. Federal government is committed, the city is committed, and at that point we can move forward. And that's all I've got for tonight, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Is there any questions of the city manager? Councilmember Naxton.
Just for clarification, so I perhaps forgot, so the Corps is the one that comes up with the final estimate of the project and not our consultant? Or do they take our consultant's number and then concur or whatever?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Naxted. So the estimate that they'll use for the PPA is the Corps estimate. We will also get a more refined estimate from our consultant as well, but the one they use for the PPA is going to be the Corps estimate.
Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we want to deal with the snow issues that the city manager's talking about, or wait until we get to the laydown? Where's the best spot to handle that?
I would suggest that we do it now, I suppose, with the,
So, Paul, I guess and I know the dealing with the vehicles in the roads and that type of stuff. Do you know what other small municipalities like us do? Are they forbidding parking winter? Is that how they've addressed it? Do you know? Have you done any research? Had a chance to look at that yet?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Vice Mayor Baisden. I did talk to Mr. Curtin about this, and he suggested, and maybe he knows for certain how Soldotna handles it. Do you know for certain how Soldotna handles this?
Mr. Curtin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the city manager. At the moment, I currently live in Soldotna, and on my street, there's signage posted that says no parking October 1st through, no street parking October 1st through, I believe it's April 30th. I'm not sure how that was formalized in policy through Soldotna, but that's what signage they have posted on multiple city streets around town.
Vice Mayor Basin.
If I could just follow up, so I guess my question would be going forward is that if we do something like that, I'd like to, especially Seward and Homer and Soldotna, see how successful they've been if they have something like that, or if it's causing them a lot of problems. We should probably look. Somebody's got to have some history in that. I guess my next question is, when we have these large events like this, do we have the ability to go out and, if an employee's sick or we don't have enough employees or the snowfall's just large, can we have a contractor help us in these situations? And have we done that, or is that feasible?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Baisden. So there's a couple different options that we've actually looked at, and right now we are in that exact scenario. We've got 5 folks in our streets crew. Right now we only have 4 because one is not available to work. A couple things that I think could be considered. One is contract work. We could potentially piggyback on what the borough has, and their contractors could extend beyond their boundaries where they maintain streets in the borough and pick up some of the city streets. That's potentially problematic because I know that the responsiveness, that when you get outside the cities, a lot of times those streets won't get touched for 2 or 3 days, so those residents might see a delayed response compared to what we typically get with city crews. The other possibility, though, when we have when we're understaffed, if we're say there's like we have now, one of our street operators is not available, having temporaries or on-calls that we could call on to fill in those periods is something that I think we should consider. It's not something that we have right now, and now we're in the midst of the snow season. It would have been probably better to address this earlier, but that is a potentially viable option. As most of you know, right now, finding people to work is extraordinarily difficult. So if we did pursue this right now and look to find someone temporary that could help us out, it may be difficult to find that position. The other component of that would need to be considered is right now we don't have the funding necessary to support that additional position. So it would take some additional funding from council. But I do think there are options out there, and I think there are things that we should consider going forward, potentially even this winter. To fill gaps if we see them, because we have a street operator out now. There's nothing to say we might have another operator out at some point in the future too. So I guess to summarize, contracting is an option. I'm not sure it's one that would satisfy the residents, but having some sort of temporary on-call folks that could fill in if we have a large event or if we're understaffed probably makes sense.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you. I think that's a good point. Is that something you can do, or do you need council's direction on that, since there might be appropriation of funds? How would we go forth with navigating the next step in that?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Winger. Technically, we would want to have the money appropriated prior to pursuing that. However, there may be some budget available for a short period of time, so we could pursue it. I mean, if council would like us to look at this, it's a matter of getting a recruitment out on the street and looking. HR would have to put together a job description, which we don't have. So there's some HR things that we'd have to do. We could get started on that relatively soon. I keep hoping that we're not going to have multiple 12-inch snowfalls, but the way this winter's starting out, it may be that this is just what we're in for. So if council is interested in us pursuing that, we can start that immediately and see if we can put something in place, and primarily as a backstop for, again, additional significant events, or in the case of lack of staff.
Thank you. Yes, I was in support at the budget time of retaining that sixth position, and worried that we'd get into a situation like this. So I think it would be in our best interest to serve the people in the community to get a temporary position out and filled so that we have more crew to handle. Is that something that if we're not experiencing large snowfalls, are they able to go through and make sure berms are being pushed back? Maybe I know we discussed fire hydrant clearing is done by Parks and Rec. Is that something that the temporary employee would also be able to help out with?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Winger. Yeah, that's likely the most appropriate location for that temporary employee. Like I said, our street operators are trained on the graders, and they're trained in our area specifically. They know the streets, they know the pitfalls in the different streets, what they should be looking out for. So to put a temporary operator on a grader, I think would be a problem, but exactly what you're talking about, clearing berms, sidewalks, those sorts of things would probably where that person would be utilized.
One last question. Would they also be able to do sanding at the intersections so that those are being sanded as well?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Winger. I believe that the sanding trucks require a CDL, so it would depend on the job description whether or not we required a CDL and if that individual did have a CDL.
Councilmember Doss.
I would just like to reiterate most of that I think we should make this a priority to get that posted as soon as possible and move forward with this temporary seasonal position and try it out, see how it goes for a year. I know we have similar positions with the airport, so hopefully we can model that type of a position, similar wording, probably a lot of the verbiage off of that. But being out, since we got an individual out since January, and in worst case scenario, that puts us having a temporary position available even coming into the snowiest months usually, which are that February, March time. So I would really like to see us try to move forward with that. I think it would make a good faith effort for the citizens too, to say, hey, we are posting for a position. I think that would look good for them to see a job posting out there too, that, hey, we know we're short a little bit, we need to work for it, we're working, making a difference and trying to change something up, and I think that would help hopefully try to give something to alleviate some of the concerns of the citizens. It would show us making an effort, and I think it needs to be done as sooner than later, hopefully, so we can get a hold of the curve. And I think it would, Mr. Curtin here would probably agree, if we can get somebody with a CDL, I think that would be a huge help. And I would think that would probably one of the preferred, we could put in the posting, it would be preferred with the CDL, so they can do at least the belly blades and that kind of stuff too.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. I don't think a temporary on-call seasonal employee that'd probably be a good idea to have occasionally, and like was said, the airport has that kind of individual. But it's, you know, it's this time of year, or when there's an event, it's easy to, I don't want to say overreact a little bit, but if you look at what the borough has, they have in their units, they call a contractor out. The contractor has about 12 hours to actually mow out, and then he's got 2 days to do the unit after that. So there's like 2.5 days to do an area. And the city of Kenai didn't get gates until like the mid-90s, in which case, you know, there were berms as high as this desk or higher sometimes across driveways, and that was just the norm. It is not now. And I don't care for the way the city of Soldotna does their maintenance. They get out there right away too, but leaving the snow in the middle of the street, and often it gets warm at the end of the storm, and then that turns into a block of ice, and trying to navigate through that. There's all these different ways everybody tries to do it. We have a lot more road miles in Soldotna. We also get our road miles done more quickly and more efficiently, and always have. And so I'm not saying that it's something that we can't make better, but I think what we have and the system we have works pretty darn good, getting around and then picking up those driveways afterwards. It is Alaska. We do have a lot of snow, and sometimes we have a lot of snow, and the berms are there. And you got to get from your house to the street too, you know, so there's all of that. So people have some responsibility in all of this. And I think that overreacting after a 12-inch storm and saying I'm not convinced we need to spend a lot of money, but I think that perhaps having, if that person is even available out there, that would be a temporary on-call person that could come in and jump in a truck or a grader or whatever we need, maybe that would be good. But I would not be hiring another full-time person for a whole year for a couple of seasonal snowfalls. And that's kind of where I was last year when we did not do that, and that was also at the strong recommendation of our Public Works Director too, not to fund that additional position.
Further comments, Vice Mayor Basin?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the other issue here dealing with enforcement. Is there anything that we can do? Maybe this is through the city manager to the police chief, where we have seasonal summertime hire. Do we do something like that in the winter time to give warnings out to begin with when this takes place? If we're having issues with cars parked and people pushing snow, I mean, you're right. It will bring a lot of grief onto us. It's more of an educational thing. Once we get past these couple big snow events, we're typically back to normal, and everybody understands what we're trying to do. I'll compliment our roads department. I think they do great work, and you know, I'm probably like everybody sitting up here. I know that a berm's probably coming if we got a big snow, because they got to move a lot of snow, and I'll wait and then I'll move the snow. But most of us are probably like that, but not everybody. And I'm just trying to figure out what we can do, you know, to help educate that part, because that's maybe we haven't done enough of that, or maybe we haven't done any of that in the recent. In our recent history here dealing with these type of events. I don't know if anything like that would help.
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gable, Vice Mayor Baisden, and Chief Ross can expand on this if you'd like. You know, we did post 74 vehicles prior to the first snow event. Once we hit October 1st, we went out and we started posting vehicles that were in the streets. Most of those folks did move their vehicles. I mean, if we had 74 out there when that's the first snow hit, it would have been a much more significant problem. So we do actively do that. It's really about changing our approach a little bit, because we've been, as many things we do in the city, we're trying to get conformance, voluntary compliance of these things, and citing and fining folks is gonna upset folks. There's no question. But I think it's time, based on the impacts that this is having to the other residents and to our street operators, to take a more aggressive approach towards this and start citing and finding these folks. I don't think, and Chief Ross could speak to this if he'd like, I don't think that we need additional personnel to do that. I just think it's a change in the approach that we're taking now. But we are actively posting folks that are in the streets. It's just taking that next step that we haven't done in the past.
Councilmember Winger?
Thank you. I just want to say, I think some of the issues that we've heard from people, or at least that I've heard from people about berms, so I'd like to just counter what Mr. Naxted said, that the snow berms are an issue for a lot of these people. I mean, it's not maybe at the first part of the neighborhood, it's only a little something a car can drive over, but when you get 5 blocks down the road, you've got a 2-foot berm, and I can say that we have a high rate of seniors in our community and people with disabilities. So as you and I can go maybe clear a berm or help our neighbors clear a berm, not these people aren't able to. So I think that's the consideration, is it's not just people that can't go out or not wanting to go out to do berms, is we actually have a high senior rate and a high disability rate. And so with that in factor, it is something that we have to be mindful. And every complaint, every voice does matter, and those should matter. I can go out and clear driveways, and I know I've had conversations with Mr. Curtin. I know the reasons why this is happening, snow loads being one of them, having equipment following behind to clean it up. So I think these are valid concerns and complaints, and these berms aren't just something that anybody can go out with a shovel and remove, because these are seniors and disabled people as well that are probably a bulk of the calls.
Further conversation? Councilmember Dothett.
I guess through the mayor for Mr. Curtin, we haven't asked you your opinion on this. Do you feel posting for a temporary seasonal equipment operator for your department to help out with this season would be useful or helpful for you?
Mr. Curtin.
Through the mayor, thank you. Councilmember Dothett. Yes, for the short term, we can certainly make use of that individual. I would like to say, we are down one person that's out, as you've mentioned, through January. But I have staffed other equipment with other members from my department. So I have other staff that I try to get whatever, planned items that they needed to get done that day finished in the morning, and then I throw them in a piece of equipment. So Terry Franzini, as many of you know, building maintenance technician, he's been out riding in a snow blower for, probably the last 10 hours, 8 hours today. I have staff in the water sewer department, same thing. I have them make their, morning rounds, and then as soon as they're able to, as soon as they have a, free, I throw them in a loader, and we'll have them out clearing, intersections and stuff off the spur. I think what I would like to do, and I would encourage council to do to help me, is to consider what is the expectation that you guys would like us to achieve. And I think once we iron that out, then I would essentially come back to you and say, this is what I believe I need, staff and equipment wise, to meet that expectation. I think that would be probably the most appropriate path forward. So, for example, today it's been snowing a majority of the day today. With ongoing snow events like this, it's very problematic for us to get inside subdivisions, because we come in and we do the heart of town, downtown area, before anyone shows up typically. That includes parking lots and, the main thoroughfares. But as snow continues 2, 3, 4 hours, we have to fall back and redo those roadways, because that's where the traffic is, that's where the people are. If it had not been snowing, we could, remove the snow, wait till the snow stops, and then we go through our normal, full plow out. We'd be inside subdivisions, things like that. Today, that didn't happen. So we've had multiple roads. Beaver Loop, for example, we probably had a plow on Beaver Loop 5 times over the course of today, from 1 a.m. This morning till right now. We've probably touched that road 5 times. The other, issue that I run into is, my guys, they're not machines. They can only stay awake so many hours safely and operate equipment. I still have to allow them to go home, sleep, and come back in. And that's what we're nearing right now. So the guys are, most of my crew, I did have some crew in prior to 4 a.m. this morning. I was full crew at 4 a.m. I don't like my guys to work more than 14 hours. Today they asked me permission to work 16, which is going to put them out to about 8 p.m. today. 8 p.m. today is likely going to mean they're not going to finish, they're not going to get into Woodland subdivision. They're not going to get into Inlet Woods until early tomorrow morning. So they'll go home tonight, go to sleep, and then they'll be back out early, before everyone's out for work tomorrow. to get into those subdivisions. So yes, some of that would help. But again, I think what would be helpful for me to know is with the members of the community, what is that expectation? So are you asking me to get every road touched inside city limits, every roadway touched with a plow? That is generally what we try to do right now, but that's with leaving berms. The other thing I could do is I could have another grader ride right behind the first one and pick up some of those berms. But the reality of the situation is that grader is then not in another part of town. And we are likely picking certain roads and subdivisions that won't get touched at all that day. But that is an option. I could go in and we could say that, a half a dozen of these subdivisions will not be touched in the first 24 hours. They will be the next day. And then the ones that we're in, we would not leave berms. Those are viable options. But getting that information from you guys would really help me finalize, that snow removal plan and kind of how we should approach it.
So I guess that would be my question to you. What's your goal right now? So we know if is your goal, what is your goal set right now for your plan in your mind, what you can do feasibly to be able to basically say you've hit the city and it's cleaned up? Is it a 48-hour window right now? Is that what your timelines are looking like? Or?
So my goal with my staff is if we get an overnight snowfall and it stops, they show up, let's say it's 2 a.m. and it's no longer snowing. Our goal is by the end of the day, every single road in Kenai gets touched at least one pass with a plow so that it's drivable. So if you pull out of your driveway, at least the roadway will get you out to a main road and you can get off to work and stores and things like that. Day 2, we would come back, we would pick up any berms left, and we would widen that roadway, typically curb to curb or ditch to ditch, depending on where you're at in town. But our process right now, without having to combat ongoing snow during the day, is a 2-day plow out. It's a 48-hour deal. We get in, touch every road, we come back, clean up berms, widen the roadway. And that's without touching sidewalks, bike paths, primarily. Forest is one of the exception. If I could, that's a big road where I could drop the wing and pick up the sidewalks. Frontage road's another one where I can drop the ring, but I can't do that on all of them. But where we can, where it's going to impact school and stuff, we try to do that. But it's right now with the staff and equipment that we have, it is a full 2-day process to basically get the roadways cleared out. We didn't come close to achieving that today with the ongoing snow that we had. Like I said, we've got multiple subdivisions that we did not get in and touch today, which is a problem. There's a lot of snow on the ground today, and we struggle with that. We do struggle with that.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Dalton?
Yeah, I just wanted to know from your perspective what your goals are now, and if we have different goals or the board has different, then we know where we can adjust things.
Yes.
And you just mentioned equipment. Is there an issue with equipment, or would you like more equipment also? Would that be something that would be helpful? Or are we having equipment shortages or issues? I just caught onto that. I don't know if that would be something also to look into.
So we have on.
You turn your mic on.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, so our shop guys were successful in getting that second one back up and running, and that is the one that's out, that you'll see out in the area today. The capital plan that we're working on at the moment is going to have some equipment modification requests. I am looking at, getting rid of those smaller trackless and going with a little bigger piece of equipment that's able to get around town a little faster. And able to move snow a little bit better. Not to, you'll see this later, but it's, stuff like that. So I do have that. We are looking to that. But yeah, again, I would ask, just, and I don't need to know right this minute, but I would like you to consider that. What is a reasonable expectation in your mind, that, you would like me to achieve in the first 24 hours, 48 hours and on from there? Because then that gives me the information I need to really tell you how many people I think I need to do that and possibly what equipment changes I need to achieve that.
Thank you for that, and I'm sure as all citizens, they want it faster is better. They're never going to have an exact number and an ideal thing, and sooner and more efficiently as possible is possibly probably what everybody would say, but now we have a realistic expectations of what we can do with what we have on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And for us, for me personally managing this, I'm trying to live within our means, right? So for me, it's not just about, personnel. It's when you have aging equipment and people, I'm not, for me, we got a new grader this last year, which is fantastic. And that was a priority for me. Like having a bunch of people, working on equipment that's falling apart, so we try to find this balance, what equipment do I need now? That's important to spend that money now. And then weighing that with staff, so you get enough people to operate those. So I don't have it all figured out for you for this next budget. I do anticipate I am going to have some changes coming before you that we'll chat about during the budget. And I'll have a little more detailed information specific on some equipment that I want to surplus, get rid of, and replace with different items. But yes, anything that you guys have, I know you guys are the ones talking to neighbors and stuff on a regular basis, and that I do think I'm failing on meeting that expectation right now, based on the number of phone calls that I get coming in and how we're addressing that. I think we're failing. And I would ask, my guys, please. This is not a slight at them. These guys are working 16 hours a day. They're doing everything they possibly can with the tools that I've given them to do it with. So I don't want this turning into where we're saying they're not doing their job or they're not doing their job well. That is not the case. It's not on them. This is on me, not them. So I just want to be really clear on that. So if you're out in the field and my guys are going by and they're working, they're doing everything. They've been out since 2 a.m. in the morning. And they're staying right now because they don't want to leave people, coming home from work right now where their house didn't get touched today. They don't want to do that. But for me, I got to balance this against safety, and there's other factors in here that I have to make these tough decisions on, and they're not always easy. So,
Well,
I'm
not
help.
here to say that your crew is doing bad at all. I'm just saying you're 20% down.
Yeah.
I mean, you're 20% slower right now if you've got down an operator. So that just reiterates to me that I think that we could have all the equipment in the world if we don't have somebody to work it, and you're already down 20%. We're looking at January, which is halfway through our snow events. Without, I think it just reiterates the more importance to possibly get that and see maybe we find somebody who's retired looking for a winter gig that's got experience from DOT or something. I mean, maybe throw Brian out there. I mean, I don't know. But I think it stresses that importance to try to get that temporary position posted and see what happens.
Vice Mayor Bazin?
Thank you, Mayor. So my comment to Mr. Curtin was, your crew has met my expectations in the 30-plus years that I've lived here. What you guys have done in this snow event is what you have done in other snow events. I expect that. I expect that if I went to Soldotna or Homer or Seward in these same events, we'd be having the same conversations. This is what happens when you have this large of a snowfall, especially when it's wet and heavy, when the first one, what you guys had to deal with. It's our job to make sure that we get the message out to the people is that you have to handle some of this until you guys can get around to it again. And if you have continuous snowfall, they're not going to be happy. You're going to get phone calls in there. That's what I expect. We're not going to be able to meet that need to have enough people here to take care of this within 24 hours when we're having this kind of snowfall. So thank your crews for what they've done. That's just me speaking. Other people have other opinions, but I think you've done a great job, and your crews have done a great job.
Councilmember Winger?
Thank you. I, too, just want to reiterate exactly what Mr. Bazin said. Your crew is doing an amazing job. I get patience isn't a virtue for all of us going forward. Just a thought, would we be able to maybe make an arrangement with some of these construction entities? Like my husband works for Connect, and they have a whole slew of graders and stuff sitting there idle, just sitting there for the winter. Is that something that maybe we could look at renting that if we were to get people that were qualified so we could get extra pieces of equipment out on the roads?
Was that a question, Ms. Winger? Because I'd read, probably, that would be more of an administration question. I don't know.
It is a question, I guess, not for Scott.
What's that?
I said it is a question, I just guess it's not for Scott then.
Yeah, I guess that's what, as far as utilizing contractor equipment. Mr. Ostrander?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilman Winger, you know, a couple of years ago, we did look at the idea of actually leasing graders during the winter, because that's when we need the majority of our graders, and we failed miserably. There was not the available inventory of graders here locally for us to do that, so it became evident that leasing wasn't an option, and we put out an RFP, and it would have been available for anyone, including local contracting companies, to pursue that. So we weren't successful with that. I believe that was 2 years ago, and we tried to do that.
Yeah, I guess I could weigh in here a little bit. I had a little experience at DOT for 17 years. I was in exactly your position of being the manager to get people out on the road, understanding how many hours they were working. And the bottom line is this, you guys and I don't really want to drag this out too much longer, but when the first year they closed Silvertip, we all adjusted our boundaries. That winter, the next winter wasn't a bad winter at all. We were able to keep up. There was not hardly any complaints. The next year was really bad, started getting more complaints. The third one was horrendous, and that's what got Silvertip reopened. You don't have a crystal ball on what happens when you get these back-to-back-to-back events where you're dealing with equipment issues, personnel issues, if you're down people that take vacations or get sick and things like that. I always said it's the level of service is a question of resources that you want to throw at it. And I'm certain Mr. Curtin can attest to this, that I would say if you gave me, 20 operators and 20 pieces of equipment, I'd have a pretty high level of service for you. But, when we got 2 operators on a night shift at 525 lane miles, when we call people in, and then of course we had when price of oil went down to $8 a barrel, we were told to cut back. We had to re-strategize how we did our operations because we just couldn't put people in the seats and the equipment. So, there's a little bit of legitimacy to what everybody's saying here, regardless, because no one has a crystal ball. We don't know. We go into the only thing that concerns me a little bit is this weather pattern we're in. I've never seen so much rain from August to September. So is this something that's ongoing? I think this is where you might want to try to hedge your bet through a temporary, post the position and see what we get. Especially since we're down or having somebody that can actually backfill positions that are open while people are either sick or vacations or things like that. So I think what I'm getting here is Mr. Ostrander's gotten some direction, right, as far as where to proceed. So and fleshing something out with Mr. Curtin to come back with a proposal. Okay. Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just wanted to make a comment on what Mr. Curtin said, and I agree with Vice Mayor Baisden, that you're not failing right now. Your streets crew is not failing. I think that the expectation should be when we have an event like this that there's going to be snow, and it's not going to be perfect, and you're going to have to work around it. I mean, that's the reality. The other thing is if we are successful with this temporary position, we're still not going to meet everyone's expectations. There's still going to be people out there that expect it to be better than it is. And it's not going to fix the problem. It's not going to make up the 20% even. I mean, this is a temporary employee. They're not going to have the same capabilities as our full-time employee. It will help. And I do think it sends a message to the residents that we're trying to do what we can. But there's still going to be folks that it doesn't meet their expectations, and we're still not going to be as fully functional as we would if we were fully staffed.
Any further questions of the city manager? Councilor next then.
Not on that topic. Do we need to make a motion to request
No.
for a posting of this? No.
No, that's something administration will come back with.
And then I guess I just had a quick comment about the enforcement of the street parking. I highly agree with changing the ordinance to make it just all day. The time thing is really hard. I know Chief Ross can probably attest to that how do you warn somebody at noon that they can't park on the streets at 4 if their car's covered in snow? It's really hard to play that game, so you have night shift out there warning people of their parking, but then in the day, it's hard to go warn somebody they can't park there. So I think changing that ordinance sooner than later would be great. I think it needs to be updated. I've always thought it was kind of an odd way we did it, in the middle of the night only, and then during the day, people are parking there. We get snow during the day, just like we get at night. At least we'd have day shift. They could go out there and address it when people are actually there in their houses and aren't asleep. You might have to do a knock and talk on their door and say, hey, can you move your car, or otherwise you're going to fine you, those kind of things. I think it would be useful to change that sooner than later.
And I would even maybe suggest a PSA out, even ahead of that, to suggest that folks don't park on the street, just to kind of get ahead of it, maybe get them used to that idea for sure. Councilmember Nexon.
Thank you. I suspect a lot of the berms that you've been getting phone calls for, and it's just kind of a natural thing, is just traffic going up and down the road creates a berm, sometimes in the center, but often on the sides. And I saw that on our street, and I thought, well, gee, it was really created by traffic. Somebody coming home, not really looking at it, might be fooled about where that berm came from. So that's a lot of it. But I did have a question about, I guess, a definition of a street, and it might be an attorney question, really, because the photo that we have here, I can't tell if the vehicle's in the street. It may be in the right-of-way, but perhaps the right-of-way is the street. Looks like it's parked up to the brush or something like that. So what is our code really covered? Is it parking on travelway, street, or street meaning right-of-way? We're gonna talk about where you can and can't park.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Nackstead. And Mr. Bloom may have a difference of opinion here. My interpretation of the code is it's written as a travelway. The street itself, it doesn't say right-of-way, it says street, so I would interpret that as either ditch to ditch or curb to curb.
Further discussion or questions of the city manager?
I
Councilmember
guess just
Dawson.
real quick on that, do we need to make a motion to change the ordinance on that, or is that something the staff will bring to us at the next meeting possibly?
The ordinance on the streets?
For the parking all day?
Yeah, that's something the administration will come back on.
Thank you.
Further questions? Before we go, I forgot something here. So Shelley said this was my job to let everybody know what's going on here. So water bottles, you probably noticed that in front of you with a little personal note there that was brought forward by the clerk. So we've decided to go with water bottles instead of having bottled water for our meetings. And part of the reason is that it's problematic to expect the clerks and the deputy clerk lugging cases of water down here all the time for us. And it saves money. I think you said within 2 years we'll recoup our costs on this. There's a water filling station just around a water fountain around the corner by the bathrooms. So that's the purpose. That's why these are yours to take and bring with you and utilize. I know sometimes there's a lot of empty water bottles that are left after the meeting, so just a little heads up, if you want water, time to bring your own. Maybe I'll pay for another operator position. With that, we'll go to City Attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I don't have anything to report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the City Attorney? Seeing none, we'll go to the City Clerk, Ms. Sainer.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. No report. Available for questions.
Questions of the City Clerk? Seeing none, we'll go to citizen comments. Is there anybody from the general public who'd like to address the council at this time on any item? On any item? You come forward and we got our little station there, and we'll get you a mic because we got to get you on the record. Gives you our name and address for the record too, please.
My name is Virginia Shook, and I live off of Floatplain Lake Road. I do appreciate the snowplow people, and I know that they try really hard. I'm a senior citizen. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I've had a heart attack. My husband is disabled and can't move. He can't go outside. So my problem is with the berms, in years past, the plow drivers used to be able to lift up the blades when it came to the end of the driveways and scoot the snow past. And I know we've had a lot of snow and I know it's hard for them. I just want to know why they can't do that now when they have been able to in the past. That's all. I'd like to know where our tax money's going. Why are we having a shortage of plow drivers and why is the equipment falling apart? I mean, I paid taxes all my life here and I don't understand that.
Well, Shook, I think we just had a pretty healthy discussion here regarding a lot of what was going on with our snow removal and and the operations and expectations and things like that. So
I
we're-
understand and I
yeah, we're-
realize they're
I think
doing the
we're-
best they can.
yeah, so there's certainly concerns up here, near as far as the berms and things like that that administration's getting complaints on that we're looking at addressing. So
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I just want people to know how hard it is. The neighborhood I live in is a lot of elderly people. We can't go out there and shovel. We just can't do it. So, I mean, it's not ongoing from the last two events. This has been going on for the last 2 or 3 years, where we've had problems with berms at the end of the driveways. All I'm saying is that there's a lot of older people. I myself can't go down there and shovel, so I was hoping that there would be some kind of a compromise or solution, some kind of help for us older people.
sure. So do you have somebody plow your driveway?
No, I shovel my driveway.
Okay, it's just the berms that are the issue then?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Weir.
Thank you, Ms. Shook, for coming down. I appreciate it. I know we had spoke earlier about this, and I just wanted to offer my children to come and help too. So if there's ever a berm, please feel free to reach out, and we will come help you if we're home. Remove that. I mean, we've done that with plenty of people in our neighborhood. We have a huge amount of elderly and disabled. It is a thing. So I recognize that. And I just wanted to let you know we are happy to come down and help you. And
Thank you. I
if you're
appreciate
here
that.
through the end of the meeting, I'll make sure you have my contact phone number so that you can get a hold of us if you can't reach us online.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Donovan.
And I would just like to say, I don't know if you were here for it, but they are down an operator due to an illness. They're out for a while, and we are talking about trying to get a post a position, so for at least some temporary help to help with expedite some of that clearing. So that we are making efforts for that, and just spread the word if you see the posting. If you know anybody who wants to be a plow operator for the winter, maybe
I
you
wish I
can
was qualified.
maybe you can spread that post for us to help us out with that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time? Anybody online? Seeing none, we'll go to council comments. Councilmember Dothett. We'll start down there.
I get stuck on the end. I got to go first. Well, thanks for the first meeting. It was exciting. So I think we're going to make some good progress and stuff, and I'm excited to be starting my journey with City Council. That's about it.
Thank you. Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank our clerk for the water bottles. Got to figure out a way to get our names on them and to stay on there, but thank you for them. And I would like to welcome our 2 newest members to the council. I look forward to working with both of you. And stay safe in the snow.
Thank you, Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just want to thank our roads crew and just all of our hardworking city employees and all of our departments. I wanted to remind people that this Sunday is daylight savings time, so remember, fall back. And when you change your clocks, make sure you check those batteries and your smoke detectors and CO2 alarms. I know Silas isn't here tonight, but I think there's just a lot of transitioning with sports currently right now. I know Kenai High School was hosting a wrestling tournament. They have volleyball and basketball going right now and hockey. So they're kind of gearing up with all these other sports. So I'm sure Silas will be back with a report on those. And I just wanted to remind people to take their time and be patient, be safe when they're out there driving. Also watch for snow machines crossing. I've seen a lot of children out riding their snow machines through residential areas and stuff. So just make sure you're being cautious and watching out for those children. And I wanted to remind people to get out and vote next Tuesday, November 8th, and the super important elections we've got coming up here. And then just a reminder, I will be out of state and I will be inaccessible starting this weekend, and I will be back in time at the evening before our next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Askin.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I want to reiterate, too, that I appreciate everything that your road crew is doing. Working very hard, I know. I'm happy to be here and start my tenure at the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Bazin.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess I want to speak with, is it Ms. Shuck? One of the things, that's one of the things that I think all of us up here are concerned about, and we want to try to find a solution to help those people out. I mean, I like what Councilmember Winger did, offering her children. I would do the same thing, and that's one of the things that I think we've probably not done enough of, taking care of neighbors, and it's important that we do that. I'll add on to sports at Kenai High School. Our volleyball team went undefeated, 18-0. They're hosting regions starting tomorrow. They play Reddington. If you want to see some exciting volleyball, come out and support our Lady Cardinals, because they're going to put it to them. And thanks for the vote for tonight. I appreciate everybody, and hopefully we can all work together.
Thank you. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. I want to welcome Councilmember Dothett and Askin to the council, and we have some interesting times ahead of us. So looking forward to working with you, and congratulations on your appointment, Mr. Baisden. It was alluded to, but the Kenai Historical Society is meeting this Sunday at 1:30 at the Kenai Visitor Center, and Paul will be our guest speaker, talking about the bluff and anything else that he wants to talk about. But it's always a good time. I suggest, if you have time that day, to come make that. And just kind of wanted to just reiterate or discuss on one other item. Generally, is I think it was Pat Porter when she was the mayor. She was working on council and commissions and all becoming paperless eventually. And so I think the Airport Commission was the first experiment, and that we're going to go paperless. And they still are, as a matter of fact, and they bring their own iPads. They're not issued iPads, and they've been doing that for 7 years or something like this now. And I know that a lot of the other commissions do as well, and we, as a commission, a council, also are moved in that direction. That's why I have an iPad here. I guess I like paper, but I've gotten accustomed to the iPad and working with it, and I have an electronic copy, and I can annotate it and all of that. And a lot of the reason for doing that was, just not because of trees and all that. It had really to do with the clerk's budget. The clerk having to print a packet of 300 pages for an individual or two or three or whatever. It actually is hard on equipment, and it's expensive and whatnot. So I guess what it really boils down to is it's been something we've been working on, and I just encourage council that if you're able to use your iPad and not rely on the clerk and the paper and all of that, and it does have a fiscal cost. It seems like it wouldn't be, but if you figure 2 meetings a month and everything, and whatever number of pages we have, it's 100 or 300, plus all the other attachments and whatnot, it does get pretty expensive. And I think the clerk's printer is starting to wear out, getting tired from all the printing that she does naturally anyway. But that's all I have.
Thank you. Next up, we have executive session. Councilor Naxton, and would ask that you include a our HR director isn't here, person, but was able, she was volunteered to be brought on electronically, or
Yeah, I'll make sure that.
Councilor Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enter into executive session to review and discuss the city manager interview questions and the applicant selection process pursuant to Alaska Statute 44-62-310C3, matters which by municipal law, municipal charter, or ordinance are required to be confidential. The executive session will include Mayor Gabriel, city council members, and the Human Resources Director Cunningham via telephone.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes?
Councilmember Askin,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. You guys are on. You're on.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move that council reconvene from executive session.
Second.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent.
Is there any objection to unanimous consent? So ordered.
Can I clarify who was my second?
Mr. Vice Mayor Basin.
Oh, thank you.
Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. City Council met in executive session and discussed the city manager interview questions, and also determined that on our November 10th meeting, when we review the applications, we'll have that meeting at 6 o'clock.
Perfect.
Seeing no other business before this body, we are adjourned.
Goodbye.